Let's take a closer look at some waiver wire options for the final week of the season. Up next on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FPT in 5 on Wednesday, September 18th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Chris Towers, and let's take a look at some waiver wire pitchers we might want to use for the final week of the season. All 6 of these names pitched well here on Tuesday. Shane Baz, Gavin Williams, Frankie Montas, Griffin Canning, Tyler McGill, and Lance Lynn. If we're looking at the matchups for the final week, Lynn is in Colorado, which is not good. Tyler McGill is at the Brewers. Griffin Canning gets the White Sox again. Frankie Montas is home against the Mets. Gavin Williams is home against the Astros. And Shane Baz is at the Red Sox. Chris, who are 2 or 3 of your favorites from this group?
Well, those aren't the best matchups that a pitcher could have, except for Griffin Canning, who I don't want to recommend. My official opinion on Griffin Canning as a fantasy baseball analyst is if you want to start him, that's up to you. But it's not going to be on me. I'm not going to start Griffin Canning, and I'm not going to tell you to start him. You got to make that decision on your own, but obviously he does get the White Sox. He had a very good start against them today. I think, look, almost all of the pitchers that you mentioned have pretty terrible matchups. I think Shane Baz is far and away the best of those pitchers, and his matchup against Boston next week is not great, but Boston's pretty much out of the playoff race at this point. They're 5 games back as of Tuesday night. Maybe they start to sit some guys at that point. I think Shane Baz is the clear top option. As for number 2, I think I would lean towards Frankie Montas, who his velocity's been up a little bit lately. He's starting to get a little more strikeouts since getting to the Brewers. I don't really buy it necessarily. When he's succeeded in his career, it's mostly been on the strength of his splitter. He's not really throwing it as much as he probably should be. So I can't say I love Frankie Montas as a start for week 27. We've gotten bit by a lot of streamers lately. Reed Detmers, a couple others. Frankie Montas is in that mix. Things could go well. Things could go poorly. That's how I feel about Frankie Montas.
Chris won't do it, but I will tell you it is okay to use Griffin Canning against.
It's on Frank's head. It's on Frank's head. Don't come crying to me.
Yeah, which just yesterday on this very podcast, we spoke about Reed Detmers and how he failed against the White Sox. So it is entirely possible, but Griffin Canning, I'll take this shot in some deeper leagues there against the White Sox next week. Let's talk about some waiver wire outfielders. And Steven Kwan is on the IL, so you could potentially need replacements for next week. In shallower leagues, we know the names. We've talked a lot about Tommy Edman, Taylor Ward. Obviously, look for those names in 3 outfielder formats. But Jordan Walker is someone I think could be in play in 16 games since returning from the minors. 250 batting average, 4 home runs, OPS right around 800. He's got 6 games next week, and 3 are in Coors Field. So 5 outfielder formats. Chris, this is something I can get behind. Jordan Walker for next week.
Yeah, I like, the long-term appeal for Jordan Walker still quite a bit. He's still striking out a lot, but what he was showing at the minor league level before getting called up was more line drives, more fly balls, more pulled balls in the air overall, more barrels. That's what we need to see from him. We know he has the bat speed. We know he can crush the ball when he makes contact with it. He needs to hit it in the right places. He seems to be doing that more often, and I'm willing to roll the dice on Jordan Walker, especially with 3 games at Coors Field.
Yes, I would agree with that entirely. Some names in deeper leagues, deeper 5 outfielder leagues, just a bunch of guys that either had big games here on Tuesday or have been hitting well lately. Mike Yastrzemski, Grant McCray, Jesus Sanchez, Garrett Mitchell, Davis Schneider, and Leody Taveras. Again, very deep league stuff here, but Chris, any names here stand out for the final week?
For the most part, these would have to be guys I'm pretty desperate to start. And look, in one league, I ended up leaving Steven Kwan in my lineup this week, hoping he would play. He ended up not playing. that's going to hurt. But I like Jesus Sanchez for next week. He cannot hit lefties at all. The good news is the Marlins have no lefties on the schedule, at least as of now for the final week of the season. Jesus Sanchez hits the ball really hard, has a 799 OPS against righties this season. I was entering Tuesday when he went 5 for 5, so I assume it's even higher now. And I think he's a viable starter, Jesus Sanchez, for next week.
I think that's entirely fair. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, and we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.